Howdy again everyone, and today it's time to check out the Samyang AF 35mm f1.4 PFE. It's a pretty new lens from Samyang for full-frame Sony E-mount cameras. It's intended to be a lightweight, low-cost design, and at $699 or only £528 here in the UK, it certainly undercuts the competition and potentially offers very good value, if it's any good, of course, and we'll be the judge of that. I'd like to thank Samyang's UK distributor for loaning me this lens for a couple of weeks for testing, although as usual, this is a totally independent review. Everyone loves a full-frame 35mm f1.4 lens, well, most people do anyway, and I've often said in the past that if I could only have one prime lens, it would be one of these, because its moderately wide angle offers a nice little field of view of the world around you, while not completely pushing away your subject, but the maximum aperture of f1.4 is what can bring your subject and night pictures to life, offering extra brightness and background separation, especially if you shoot quite closely to your subject. This 35mm lens in particular is pretty simple in its design, as you can see. It's mostly made of plastic, and at only 470 grams, it is indeed pretty lightweight for a full frame lens of this type. The rear mount is made of metal though, of course, and we get a USB-C port in there for future firmware updates, and a weather sealing gasket as well. The lens's only control point here is a large rubberized manual focus ring, which turns very smoothly and works nice and responsively with the lens's autofocus motor. Impressively, the lens doesn't seem to suffer from any focus breathing. That's pretty unusual and could be helpful for video makers. In single-shot autofocus mode, the lens's autofocus works quickly, accurately, and almost silently, emitting just the quietest little rumble sound which is barely audible, but which may get picked up just slightly on your internal microphone when recording audio. Switch over to autofocus continuous mode for a tiny little extra boost in autofocus speed. This is a nice performance, and it had no problem at all with subject tracking in my tests. The lens comes with a plastic cup-shaped hood which clicks into place nice and securely. It has a 67mm filter thread size and does not feature its own optical stabilization. Overall, the lens's build quality might seem dead simple, but its fast autofocus and lack of focus breathing are both pretty impressive to see. Well, let's see what its image quality is like. We'll start on a full-frame camera, so today it's getting treated to the brutal 61MP sensor of my Sony a7C-R. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. If you want images zoomed into the 42MP ratio of my older reviews, by the way, for comparison, then you can find a link to a special unlisted video in the description below. At f1.4 in the middle, we're seeing a number of things, quite good contrast and very good sharpness, but unfortunately rather a lot of purple fringing on contrasting edges. Stop down to f2 for perfect sharpness and contrast, but a little of that colour fringing lingers on. Finally, at f2.8, everything looks absolutely perfect in the middle. Alright, let's open back up to f1.4 and look over into the image corners. On the way to them, I'll point out that the mid-frame here is looking a little soft. That could have implications for the aps-c image quality, but over in the image edges, sharpness does pick up and actually looks pretty good. At f2 there's only a small improvement in those image corners and in the mid-frame, but at f2.8 and f4 there's some more clarity there, if not quite perfect sharpness, and at f5.6 the mid-frame looks good and the far corners, well, ditto. Not totally razor sharp by any means, but great for such a high resolution sensor. f8 looks about the same, but stop down as far as f16 and softness creeps in due to diffraction. So, on a full frame camera, if you're looking for a 35mm lens that can offer you 61MP of resolution, then this Samyang optic doesn't quite get you there. There are a few little soft spots in the lens's performance, but neither is it a million miles away. It's generally offering quite a decent amount of detail and contrast in your images, and anyone shooting on a 42 or 33MP camera will be fairly satisfied. Its biggest problem, of course, is that purple fringing on contrasting edges at the brightest apertures, and that can be tricky to remove in editing. Well, I suppose at this lens's lower price point, something has to give somewhere. Okay, let's see how it performs on a crop sensor camera by having a look in this camera's aps-c mode. Purple fringing looks stronger than ever here at f1.4, although sharpness and contrast are still okay. Like before, that fringing is still there at f2, but at f2.8 it's finally gone. Let's open back up to f1.4 and take a look over in the image corners. They are definitely softer, although I have seen worse than this in the past. At f2 and f2.8 we only see small improvements. At f4 and f5.6 the image is starting to look quite good here, although still not razor sharp. Interestingly, it's at f8 that we get the sharpest performance in the corners, even though technically diffraction should be kicking in here. As before, f16 shows much stronger signs of softness though. Overall, I wouldn't recommend this lens for aps-c shooters. Judging from its image quality, it's clearly designed with full-frame camera sensors in mind. Okay, let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at vignetting and distortion. Without corrections, the lens projects a moderate barrel distortion here, but at f1.4, vignetting is very strong. Stopping down to f2, f2.8 and f4 eventually brings you some corner brightness. Next, close-up image quality. And this lens can focus down to 30 centimeters, not bad for a 35mm optic. When shooting close up, sharpness is okay, although there's a touch of ghosting and colour fringing on contrasting edges. At f2 we see only a small improvement, but it's at f2.8 that we get excellent sharpness again. And now, work against bright lights. The lens does display a fair bit of flaring here, but it's actually pretty translucent, which means it doesn't really cause too much of an issue most of the time in your images. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sunstars. Corner image quality isn't the sharpest at f1.4, but at that maximum aperture and at f2, we can make out a small coma smear on that bright white point of light. Stop down to f2.8 and it's gone. Well, let's zoom out and look for sunstars. At f5.6 they're beginning to emerge, at f8 they're stronger, but at f11 and f16 they're really quite striking. Let's take a look at this lens's out of focus backgrounds then. Okay, they are averagely soft here, although especially bright specular highlights do see some outlining which generates a bit of an edge to those backgrounds. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. It's quite strong from f1.4 through to f2.8. It's even visible at f4 and f5.6. At f8, it's finally gone. Overall, as you've been able to see, this is a lens with plenty of strengths and weaknesses. Sharpness is decent enough on a full-frame camera, but weaker on aps-c. It enjoys quite good contrast, but purple fringing is high at bright apertures. Its sunstars are nice, its bokeh just average. Its body feels lightweight and a little plasticky, but its autofocus and low focus breathing are excellent, especially for video makers. You can definitely save a bit of money with this lens and get some nice pictures at the same time, that's for sure, not to mention great video footage. But for pixel peepers with the highest standards and very high resolution cameras, its compromises will leave you wanting more. Blah blah blah, thanks for watching, blah blah blah, links in the description below, and thank you to all my Patreon supporters and channel members who keep this sponsorship free channel trucking on while getting all kinds of exclusive bonus content.